Hi, we're sisters, Amy and Nancy Harrington, the founders of the Passionistas project. We've created an inclusive sisterhood where passion driven women come to get support, find their purpose, and feel empowered to transform their lives and change the world. On every episode, we discuss the unique ways in which each woman is following her passions, talk about how she defines success, and explore her path to breaking down the barriers that women too often face. Today, we're talking with Liz Morse, a specialized kinesiologist who uses movement and non touch acupressure to help reduce or eliminate stress, trauma, test anxiety, and performance anxiety. She's helped people pass the bar and the MFT, ace the SAT, ACT, and achieve their career goals by teaching people how to empower themselves by partnering with their subconscious mind. She's based out of Santa Barbara, California, but works with people all over the world on Zoom. So please welcome Liz Morse.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being here. We're really happy to have you. What are you most passionate about?
Gosh, helping people who've been traumatized. And a lot of times people don't really know why things aren't working out the way they want them to. But it turns out that we can sort of carry around our own internal glass ceiling. And I just really enjoy helping people achieve whatever it is that they would like for themselves.
And what inspired you to want to help people in this way?
Oh, because I need to help myself. And I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who to turn to. And once I figured it out, I also needed extra help because I think I was a unique character. My dad was in the military, active duty during Vietnam. And so my nervous system was really, really traumatized by that. And I've been working to heal myself and had to develop extra tools to be able to do that. So it's been a pleasure to be able to then, I got the message. I'm as well as I can be on my own at this point. If I want to get better, I need to be helping other people.
Oh, that's beautiful. So let's take a step back. Tell us a little bit more about that childhood and your experiences growing up.
Yeah, my dad, he was doing the best he could, but he was, from the trauma of his childhood, he was narcissistic and he was a very big rager. So he was, I think they call it displacing it, when he would take the stress from his work and, from being shot at in Vietnam or, having friends get shot out of the sky or whatever, and coming home and venting it on the family. And I took all of that in, and I thought that everybody had the kind of, experience that I had. I didn't realize that some people actually had loving families and quiet homes and dinner times that didn't create knots in your stomach. So it took a while to figure that one out.
And you had mentioned to us also that, you were in your mom's belly when the JFK assassination happened. Like there was societal trauma happening, right? Including war beyond what was going on at home. So it seems like people don't necessarily equate trauma to what's happening beyond their personal experiences sometimes too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, for people who can't identify anything in specific that happened in their family because their family was so good and supportive family, you can look to the fact that the societal things have been happening, like wars and famines and all of that kind of stuff. And we really are connected to everything that's happening on the globe, especially these days with all of our technology.
Yeah. So talk about where you went to college and what your early career path looked like.
Yeah, so I first had a philosophy degree from UC Santa Barbara and didn't find that too useful for putting food on the plate. So I ended up going to school again, getting another bachelor's in fashion design from UW-Madison, and then finished up the final year of the program at FIT in New York City. And then ultimately went on to get a master's degree in internet strategy management.
And so did you pursue any of those careers actively after you graduated?
Well, the one career that I was in for a long period was 7 years working in the fashion industry, and I was working in import operations and started off at the bottom of the totem pole and ended up being an import operations manager, handling $70 million a year in product and really operating as a vice president.
And so what inspired you personally to learn more about overcoming the trauma and healing your health?
Well, I tried all of the routes to curing myself with pills, Western medicine style. And I had the only doctor who wasn't prescribing opiates at the time. There was one doctor, at least one doctor, and she was my doctor. Other than that, the other meds gave me side effects, and I'm sure that you could say that so would the opiates, but not. She turned me away when I went there in horrible pain, and she said, "You need to deal with the stress in your life, and you might try yoga." And I actually had done yoga, and I couldn't imagine how down dog was really going to, get to the root of the kind of pain I was talking about. And I just really didn't realize that physical pain can result from emotional stress. It's the same circuit board. And when you don't deal with figuring out how to de-stress yourself, you end up becoming more and more tight in your body, and that rigidity is being reinforced by fascia. The feelings are being reinforced by fascia because they're so precious. The neurochemicals of emotion will never be released until they are learned. And so we just get more and more and more of this internal skeleton almost of reinforced fascia. And it's inflammatory in quantity, and inflammation can lead to disease, whatever our genetic weak link is, right? So I got to the point where all of the neurochemicals in my body were making my body very uncomfortable and painful. And emotionally, I was as stressed as I could possibly be. And I felt like I was breaking down. I was actually starting to see things kind of, popping into my vision on my peripheral vision. So my vision was being impacted, my mental state was being impacted, and my body was being impacted. I had fibromyalgia, with extreme pain. I couldn't sit upright for any length of time. Couldn't stand upright without being in, crippling back pain from it. So I ended up very motivated because I could look around me and I could see I wasn't in a war zone. I wasn't in a famine, but I was operating as if I was in extreme danger all the time. And I could see that the fear was killing me. And I needed to figure out how to get past that. And I realized that somehow my conscious mind was making decisions that were not for my best, highest and best good. And like extended stay on the planet above ground. So I started to get open to listening to my intuition, because I realized that I wasn't in touch with my intuition at all. But I realized that I just had to believe that there was a part of me that was able to direct me still. Because I knew that my conscious mind was making some bad choices, and that my subconscious mind was also making some bad choices. And that intuition indeed did start sending me like basically a breadcrumb trail to follow.
Wow.
And the way that I followed that was following the repetitions. So if any of you have ever had the experience where you have somebody talk about a book, and then out of the blue, somebody else in the next day or two talks about the same book, that's what I'm talking about. It's not an accident. It's synchronicity. That's how you follow your path.
Right. Right. And so how did you start to learn those things? I mean, you went to yoga and you did that, but did you work with people one-on-one? Did you take courses? Like, how did you start to experienced this stuff?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing was I'm also a Southern historical fiction writer, and I had arranged for a residency, a 6-week residency on Martha's Vineyard, which unfortunately is no longer active, but it was fabulous. And so I went out there. I was having a problem with spinal stenosis symptoms, and I went out, and there was an osteopath out there who told me that I was either going to be in a wheelchair in my 50s or I needed to do hot yoga 3 times a week. And I was right at the point where I could still choose which path I wanted to be on. So I took my hot yoga hot yoga class the same day. And I had taken a bunch of different books out with me that, again, like the double mentions of the synchronistic breadcrumbs. And there were other things that came up while I was out there talking to the other writers. But, it was a combination of all of those things. And also what was really helpful was Julia Cameron's artist pages, if you've ever heard of that. She talks about writing in a way that's very helpful, where you're thinking of the stillness of a pond. And do we argue about how there's algae on the pond? No, we just accept that the pond has algae on it. And so what we write, we don't criticize, we just accept. And so we have our morning pages, she calls them. And also, I was taking classes from a writing teacher who is interested in writing to heal. That was something that came up. And it's where you ask yourself about events that happened in your past, how you felt about them then and how you're feeling about them now, and helps the 2 hemispheres of your brain start to come into synchronizing again. So our trauma can be held at a different vibration, the vibrational frequency between the 2 hemispheres. And there's actually been studies to show that when you, even just for 15 minutes, they've been able to see that the students were using the healthcare system, I think 40% less for 3 or 4 months after doing that, just by that one little thing. So all of these things were methods that helped me a lot.
And did that writing workshop and those early writings lead to you writing the book, Your Best Health by Friday?
Yes. Well, I realized as I was getting better that I should take notes. That was part of my journaling process for sure. And it actually leapfrogged over my Southern historical fiction novel, which is called West of Center, and one of these days will get published. But I felt like Your Best Health by Friday was just waiting to get out in the world, and it had a speedometer on it that was, basically 90 miles an hour. So that was out. It took about 6 months of writing is all that took. Yeah.
And what do you hope people take away from that book?
Empowerment, just to be able to understand that there are little things that you can do that are very easy that can make a big change. So it's kind of like wherever we are in life's journey, say you're a freighter, you're on a freighter, and there's a little tugboat that's trying to direct you, right? And the tugboat doesn't have to do much at all if the distance to shore is of the island or whatever is a long way away, right? But you can avoid crashing into the island very easily. So if the freighter is very healthy, you don't have to do much, right? But there's always things that you can do to heal. You just have to devote a little bit more time to it. And there's suggestions, easy, medium, and harder things to do. And depending on, you can sort of pick and choose with all these different areas of whether it's physical things that you're dealing with or emotional things you're dealing with, or that kind of thing. So just realizing the power of setting an intention. That's really so important.
So you mentioned earlier the right brain, left brain. thing. So can you, for those of us who don't understand brain science, can you talk about how you can access those and to reset your stress?
Sure. So the left hemisphere state is the ego mind and the subconscious. And so these are two they're judgmental states of mind. And the right hemisphere is all about, well, as Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor says, who's a neuroscientist who has written 2 books, My Stroke of Insight, which is also a TED Talk, and Whole Brain Living is her second book. She talks about the right thinking mind as a spiritual being having a physical experience, and the right emotional state as just it's the positive, joyful emotions. So we don't realize when we and do let me share my screen. Ah, yes, great. So here's her page 32, 33 in her book, which I highly recommend everybody get. She's got her own method of being able to easily toggle between the emotional states, which is it's a good support for what I do. And as you can see, they're opposite. So the left thinking is verbal, the right thinking is nonverbal. The left thinking is punctual, the right thinking is lost in the flow of time. The left thinking is fixed, and the right thinking is open to possibilities. And then if we look at the left emotional and right emotional, we see rigid versus open, cautious versus risk taking, stern versus friendly, bullies versus supports. So we can see that it's all of these opposites, right? But I think most of us, if we looked at these 4 characters, we would think, oh, those are 4 different people, right? We wouldn't think those are 4 aspects of myself. So instead, what's happening is the trauma that we go through is keeping us showing parts of left and right hemisphere, depending on how traumatized we are, and in what way we're traumatized. But it's not letting us access both sides so easily. And particularly these days, as we've spent more and more time computer-based, we're not in the state of mind where we can switch back and forth easily. So when we were growing up, we used to spend a lot of time outside on our own, and we would figure out games with our friends to play. That is directly connecting in to creativity. So that's the right emotional character 3. But when we don't let our children be bored, when they're complaining, and so we hand them an iPad, they're not developing their own path into that. And when they don't have their own access to it, they only are ever stressed and more stressed. And it's almost an accident if they somehow do something out in nature where they feel connected to it. Because when they're hooked on the iPad and you stick them outside in nature and walk around, they're annoyed that you've made them leave their iPad. And it takes a while for them sometimes to get into looking at it as not as punishment, but maybe something they want to do. So also the left thinking character is the ego, and the left emotional character is the subconscious mind. And that subconscious mind is the trigger that prevents us from getting into the right hemisphere. And while I don't mean to talk down about the left hemisphere, because we need it to protect us from the tiger or the Mack truck, that kind of thing. It's coming our way. It knows, hey, that's bad news. Got to get out of the way. Meanwhile, our right side would just be like meditating, totally chill, Mack truck, end, right? So we have to have both. But we need to realize, wow, here's this whole other pathway. And no wonder it's so hard to get around in the world, because we've got basically 4 characters fighting for control of the steering wheel. And character 2, that emotional character 2, the subconscious, which I call the child mind to make it seem less scary, that child mind is what we have to jump over in order to be able to access the right hemisphere. and to even be in our upper level of thinking with the left brain too. The left emotional character can really take us out, and it's taking us out for a number of reasons, but really because I think of it as a hero. It's got its own programming. It knows, so this is Dr. Gay Hendricks' work. There's a zone that's comfortable for the subconscious. It's learned. If I operate within this parameter, I don't get in trouble for thinking too much of myself and tooting my own horn or whatever. If I operate in this zone, people don't complain that I'm not doing my part. So I don't get spanked down here. I don't get bullied up here. This is a safe zone. And it's remembering the safe zone as a child for our whole lives. So when we want to start that business and we want that business to go through the roof, it's saying, oh, that's the upper limit. We can't go there. Zone of genius is bad. Zone of genius is bad. And so it's working to sabotage. It'll send us emotions to manipulate us, like fear or anxiety or depression. So we can't fill out all those forms. It just seems so daunting. Oh, we might as well just take a nap. It's hopeless. Pull the covers over our head. So that's the internal glass ceiling. But if we give it what it wants, which is to learn emotionally, then it's going to start to cooperate. And it will allow us to be able to take a step forward. Now, the subconscious is all about continuity. That's its job. And thank God, it's created continuity for us and kept us safe. But it's willing, if we let it learn feelings and educate it, to rewire itself and allow us to take a step forward. And the more of those steps that we take, the higher the vibration we're in. And if you think about, I'm not going to put it up because I know the David Hawkins folks are very strict about not having his chart up on the internet because they want people to buy his books, which are awesome. But if you Google on the internet, you might find his scale, which all of the emotions at the survival paradigm are in red and orange. And if you want to get out of that and you were raised in trauma, you have to learn those feelings. And they're not pleasant to feel. And if we felt them as children, they usually re-triggered our parents and then they would yell at us. And that's its own extra trauma. So we've had a lot of time avoiding feeling those feelings. But if we feel them, just a drop, just one drop, it allows our subconscious to learn. And so that's what I do. I have a Wednesday program where I'm doing that for free with people, Wednesdays at 10 Pacific, to try and help them understand. Just a drop. It's a step, right? Each step, you're working your way out of that survival paradigm into thriving more and more.
I think another element of this, and I don't know if this is something that you study or work in, is as women, especially in business, we're told our feelings are bad, that we are not to show emotion, that we have to, lock that up to be in the male space to keep the men feeling comfortable with the way we react to things. So is that part of what you study? And is that something, do you have thoughts on what women can do to be more comfortable tapping into their feelings and not being afraid that that's going to alienate other people?
Well, yes. So basically the way the culture works is poker face, right? But we are constantly exchanging how we feel nonverbally. And so just the fact that we're willing to go there, we could go in with like the toughest, whatever, like completely blank slate. And we would still have a different feel to them because of the fact that we're willing to be feeling. Even as unwilling on a certain level as we are, we still have the door open so much more of a crack than men do. So my suggestion is not to be doing anything in public where you're going to be picked up on at all. The stuff that I'm suggesting is stuff that you can be doing at home to support yourself. You can be doing in the bathroom stall. So here and here, this is a really great emotional reset, an inch above the eyebrows and an inch below the collarbone. And just tell yourself everything always turns out marvelously well. And it's not toxic positivity, it's giving guidance to the subconscious mind. So there's a difference between the two. We have to acknowledge the fear. We have to let the feeling of the fear happen. Again, this is something that we can do at home and when we have a safe space. But when you're in the moment, one of the things that I do is a type of Tibetan meditation. It involves breath holding and imagining movement of energy and breath in the body. And doing that helps people hold their stuff together when they're out in the real world and somebody's being a jerk, so that you don't go into your automatic patterns. So you actually can be less reactive and less emotional at work, which is a great thing.
That's incredible. Why didn't we hear about that sooner? So how and when did you decide to start Right Brain University, and what can people expect from going there?
I started it in 2015, and I've been getting word out rather slowly, I would have to say, here and there, although I do travel around the world and speak, as well as speak in the States at trauma conferences primarily. What people can expect if they work with me is to learn how to feel safe connecting with themselves emotionally, and to feel calmer, to feel like they've been able to, like, if they have a sense in the past of that they used to be able to like take a nap and really feel rested after a nap, or really feel rested after sleeping at night, they get that reset from a session. So what was the clincher for me and knowing I was on the right path was exactly that. Just so much static, so much pressure, so much stress, go into a session, walk out of it 75 minutes to 90 minutes later, feel like I'm grounded, centered, in touch with how my body's really feeling. And that might be that my body's feeling really tired, and I just was able to reset the adrenaline factory. So I'm not wasting all those neurochemicals anymore. And I can just be in the, wow, I need to get some extra rest now mode. So it's about being able to get back into rest and digest, which if all we ever do is allow the stress, we're not digesting. We're not getting the nutrition that we should. And we're not able to reset. And I think it's happened a lot to people since the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, is that specialized kinesiology? Is that what that practice is, or is that something different?
No, that's specialized kinesiology. And there's a number of really great aspects of specialized kinesiology. It's a group of probably over 150 types at this point. And it started with a chiropractor wanting to know more about traditional Chinese medicine. And he looked to see what was going on with the 42 muscles that chiropractors check, and to try and figure out how to get them, if a muscle was turned off, how to turn it back on using points on the body. And from there, all of these different ways of working with the body started to develop. It's really been amazing.
And so one of those is non-touch acupressure. Is that true?
Yes. So there's probably quite a few that you could say are, in essence, non-touch acupressure. There are a number of them that involve what's called muscle testing, muscle response testing, which has been shown in an Oxford study they had a 63% success rate in a double-blind study with people, not all of whom were fully trained in how to do muscle response testing. So the Oxford folks were completely excited about that. So the body basically has the ability to say yes or no. It makes sense or doesn't make sense to the body. And from there, we can see, well, what does the body need to learn emotionally? What does the body need to learn physically? And we can address it with these traditional Chinese medicine type of interventions. Basically ways in which different aspects of the body how the body talks to itself to reset. And it could be, say, for example, when a muscle works and when a muscle fires, the neurolymphatic response isn't resetting. So it could be something completely on a physical level like that. But what can happen in the traditional Chinese medicine viewpoint is that all of these, the nervous system is set up as an electrical system, right? And certain meridians are focused on certain things, certain feelings, for example. So if you think of liver, I mean, this is something that our language supports, right? So with the liver, people think of liver folks who are like liver types as being angry. And people might say something like, but also sometimes fear, like you scared the liver out of me, right? And you could say something along the lines of, they vented their spleen. That's an old time expression, right? So we have ways in which we, like, the folk wisdom is that there is something to these parts in the body, right? So this is sort of corroborating the traditional Chinese medicine. So what we would say with that traditional Chinese medicine thing is, so the neurolymphatic that went off because that muscle isn't firing, well, what meridian system is it on? Is it that anger is shorting it out because we've held those neurochemicals of emotion in the body for so long and all of the fascia is wrapped around them, it can't do its job anymore. So if we let that person feel anger, then the fascia doesn't have to hold it anymore. The fascia can rewire itself, and then the muscle can function properly. So that's what I'm doing with folks is somebody says, I want to become a doctor. The body's having a response to that. It's bunching up. It's saying no for whatever reason. And great if it says yes, but if it says no, that's who I can help. And I can say, oh, it needs to learn, this one is, it's resentment, There's some way in which resentment is holding you back. And the body needed to learn that before it could allow this other thing. And now why resentment? Well, so for example, we were treated a certain way by our parents that led to some suffering on our part. And now they want us to become a doctor. So you don't get to choose your own path. So then resentment is there because you want them to see the suffering and all of the manipulation. And if you don't get to the resentment and sort of feel that and then feel into, now you can feel, maybe I do want to become a doctor. And I was just holding on to this because I wanted them to see how much they suffered, but I don't have to prove to them how much I suffered. I could just really just be a doctor and be my own person. So there's just so many fun ways to help people that they don't know that they're holding on to any of this stuff, but it's there and it's holding them back. So then they get to go on their merry way.
So do people come to you when they have some kind of, I guess my question is it more of a physical thing or a mental thing or both? Like, does someone come to you because they have some kind of illness and they can't figure out how to physically heal themselves? Or do they come to you more for things like that? Like, I don't know why I don't want to do this or why I'm resisting this. Is it more one or the other?
It's probably more people who the latter, of people who feel that there's some resistance or just see the evidence in their bank account that there's obviously some kind of resistance. And by the way, they can have a hard time showing up to a session because of the resistance. And it's the subconscious wants to stay in control until you really teach it that no, we're working together as a team. I'm going to be kind now, but I'm going to be a firm parent and insist that we go to these sessions. It can often be something where they sign up for a session and their subconscious is like, no, and they think that's a sign, but it's really just manipulation. But I do also work with people who have physical stuff that they can't figure out, and the doctors aren't coming up with answers either. So they work both ends. They work the Western side and me, and I help get them where they need to go back towards health as well. So it's a super rewarding career path, let me tell you. I feel like Robin Hood for all of the people who either I'm helping them get back their health or I'm helping them become the person that they want to be. It's just fabulous.
So let's talk about a couple of the programs you offer. There's one called Crush Test Anxiety and Test Taking Breakthrough Sessions. So talk a little bit about what happens there.
Yeah, so test taking anxiety, it's a type of learned helplessness. And what's really great from that angle is that it can be so easy, to help people find their way through. It's still like this is a process of layers that get removed. Continuity is important. We can't change too quickly to keep that subconscious mind happy and healthy. But what's often happening is, so it's a combination of things. You, as a child, other people have an easier time, other people get A's, and it hurts too much. So then you might have oh, well, I don't do well in that. I don't care. I don't care. Yeah. And so that kind of preserves your sense of self, right? That, well, you just didn't even try. So it's not important to you. So that's why. But the reason why you might be having the situation start off where you're not doing well is because of, say, primary reflex. When we're born, in utero, we actually have primary reflexes that are activating, and they help us learn patterns of movement that will help in our survival. Once we are a certain age, those reflexes are supposed to have been integrated along the way. And by 4, all of our primary reflexes should not be active anymore. They should be part of an integrated system. But when we're traumatized, it can retrigger and reactivate these reflexes. So it could be that, let's say, for example, it takes 3 primary reflexes to have proper 3D vision. And you could be wanting to get out there and do great things in playing baseball, for example, and suddenly you have these activated reflexes and you can no longer see 3D. Or and then you might be stumbling into things and you might have, bumped into something and fallen down, hit your head, and then you have to go in to take a test. And you're in fight or flight, but you have to do well on that test and you bomb it. So then it becomes this thing of, well, I can't. Why is it that I can't? I don't know why I can't, but I can't. And fast forward for a number of years of, these things happening, and your system is afraid every time you take a test. When we're afraid of something, it's that fight or flight, it's putting us into our dominant hemisphere. That's where, so normally our 2 hemispheres are talking through the middle, the corpus callosum. And when we aren't talking through the corpus callosum, we're reacting to something like the tiger that we're running away from. That's so from whatever our dominant hemisphere down to the same side in the body. So typically, the people that get into the most trouble in tests consistently are the ones who happen to be right hemisphere dominant, because languaging and so words and numbers reside as part of the left brain. We excel at that academic on the left side. And so if we associate test taking with something that we're afraid of and we're in that zone, we can't access our letters and numbers the way that we should. And so more and more we go down that pathway of it. We're doing fine sometimes, but something triggers us and we can't, like the higher the stakes the tests are, the more likely that we're going to be in that fight or flight zone in the dominant hemisphere. And so I'm teaching people self-talk, exercises, and emotions that are needed to rewire the brain to be able to do well on tests. And if we don't take care of it as a test-taking thing, it becomes a general performance anxiety in life. And because it's that same kind of thing, when we get out into the world, whatever dominant hemisphere we're at, if we can't, for example, be thinking of the group and we're only thinking of ourselves and we're in a group situation like an interview, that's going to come across and people are going to be turned off from hiring us. So, can we even get the job? And then once we're in the job, can we be part of a team? Or are we of the mindset that it's all about us? So there's all different ways in which performance anxiety can impact both hemisphere dominant people. But yeah, especially the right hemisphere and dominant people, and the people who are traumatized. It's going to show up a lot more.
So do you work with kids as well, or do you mostly just work with adults?
I mostly work with adults and older children that of the age to go take the ACT and the SAT, that kind of thing, and grad testing, because a lot of people will do well on the ACT or SAT, and then when they want to go into grad school, they can freeze at that point, or trying to take the bar, or not trying to get licensed once you've finished the learning process.
So tell us what non-contact mindset coaching is all about.
Well, so contact coaching would involve, touch, which you have to be licensed in order to touch people. And I was not interested in having a practice that was basically massage based or something like that, where I would have a massage license and then be able to muscle test people. So that's where I developed the emotional acupressure that at first I was practicing on friends and family to be able to make sure that I could get the same results as if I was actually doing the muscle testing in person, and getting the feedback of, no, I'm able to feel this and get the answer wherever they're at. So I have helped people in Australia, Turkey, and UK, that kind of thing. It's fun.
Amazing. What are your brain gym classes?
Brain gym is this amazing process. So basically, when we have negative events happen to us, it can create a part of the brain reacting differently than it should. So we have the brainstem layer, the emotional brain layer, and the cortex layer, and the prefrontal cortex. And for the two sides, right? So any region within any of these can react negatively, and instead of working across the hemispheres, go into that reactive, fight or flight. And it might be that for a particular goal that you have, that the brainstem on the right side is activated, or the emotional brain is activated on the left side in a way that's non-optimal. And so when you work with the combination of the movements, that BrainGym offers. They have 26 movements, and some different forms of reset, I would call it. Then what happens is you change that reaction in the dominant hemisphere into working across hemispheres again for all of the regions of the brain. And I have seen that there's a lot of controversy among the science-based folks that have done research on this. And I think the reason why is because most people who get to the level of education that a scientist has to have in order to be able to function are not at the level of trauma that people who are helped by BrainGym are under. It can make any brain work better, including the scientists, but their brain's already functioning well enough, because the people that come to my program on Wednesdays, I do BrainGym the last 15 minutes, and I don't record it, so you can't look at it later, because it's not allowed to be recorded at this point. But even after the 45 minutes of the other stuff, people can still feel that there's an extra boost that it gives them, where they felt like before that same sideness without the cross communication felt more normal. And then they can feel, oh, wow, now this is feeling normal. And it's healthy, because this part is 90% of our brain. This part's 10%. So you're stressing out your body if you're reacting instead of cooperating.
And what's panharmonic healing all about?
Panharmonic healing is the emotional acupressure that I have developed. It started off as 20 different points on the body that corresponded to different emotions. And I've developed it into hundreds of thousands of emotions. So what I found, if you know of Dr. Dan Siegel, he talks about naming emotion to tame it. And that's what I've found is really vital, is to be very specific. And so panharmonic started off with 20 emotions and 20 different types of emotion. So there might be an emotion that was handed down ancestrally, or an emotion that was a chronic emotion, or an emotion that was unexpressed or attached. An attached emotion is where you got to benefit from it. So you don't want to give up and learn the feeling, because you want to have support for your way of thinking, because you got to benefit from having it that way. So there were 20 of those, and now there's 150, I think I've got at this point. And so you could have attached anger, you could have chronic anger, unexpressed anger, and now there's these 150 different ways you could have anger. So you're really doing quite a bit of taming to be able to name with that specificity. And yes, it does seem to me, given how much it's helped me and everybody I'm working with, that it really is, the body keeps track of all of these things in incredible, impeccable detail.
So do you have one or two success stories that you can share with us from your work?
Sure. I've had people go through some pretty incredible stuff, past trauma, to be able to take tests and pass them, the bar or the LMFT. People who are helping people who are trying to remake their lives. Obviously I can't go into too many details because of how personal these things are, and I wish I could get people to share the depth of what I do. But just there was a fellow who I helped, whose mom had there had been family trauma in his youth that had led to surgery, which had led to chronic basically failure to thrive, and so I was able to help him pull through and, to help people go from not being able to support themselves to becoming a lawyer is an incredible feeling, and a lot of times what keeps particularly women in relationships is not being able to support themselves, and to know that I've made a difference to people who needed it when they needed it, when they should, like the least likelihood of success, and knowing that they made it through to the other side and are now in this whole other path is just incredibly rewarding to me. And helping people, I help somebody improve their business by 40% in a year, when she needed to. So so basically what I think of it is, there was this movie about the law of attraction, and I think it really opened people up, right? To, wow, it's this thing and I can feel it too, and it's so wonderful, but it's not working for me. It must not be real. But the subconscious mind is slamming the door to the law of attraction every day of our lives unless we let it learn feelings, just a drop. And if we let it learn feelings and we practice not knowing, like imagining, you see all of the signs are pointing to this negative thing happening. And instead you say, everything always turns out marvelously well, as a direction for the subconscious. And I can't know that it's not because I am not my higher power. That opens the door a crack. And then you let the law of attraction come through. So it's not, manipulating your higher power. Your higher power always wants the best for you. It's about letting the higher power do what the higher power wants to do, if it chooses to.
Wow. So what's the one thing we're not asking you about what you do that we should be asking you?
One of the things that I'd love to talk about is, what would optimal look like? So you're a mom or a dad that's watching this, and your child comes home and is very upset over something that happened at school. Maybe they got bullied. And so instead of maybe letting ourselves get caught up in the feelings of all that, just be curious about, wow, that's really stirring something up within me. Isn't that interesting? And maybe practicing a little bit of this at the same time for yourself, and having your kid do that too. Just say, oh, let's feel into this. Just be curious, right? And realize that in an optimal world, what would be going on is that kid would go to school and the teacher would say, boys and girls, today we're going to learn about anger. Now, anger is a feeling, and feelings are just information. Sometimes we get into trouble for feelings because we do things because of them. But just because we're angry doesn't make us bad. Now, we might hit somebody because we're angry, and we need to learn we can't do that. That's not okay. But today we're going to learn about all the other things that we can do to express anger. We're going to paint, and we're going to draw, and we're going to use scissors, and we're going to cut up paper in an angry way. And we're just going to let ourselves feel this feeling and know that we are whole, complete, and perfect as we are, as we feel this feeling. And then be teaching children that they could tolerate the sensations in their body of anger without feeling like they have to do anything about it. And wouldn't that be helpful if somebody had a gun? They wouldn't feel that they had to go get it because they had a feeling of anger that they think somebody else made them feel. And on top of that, we would learn, if you let these kids do this kind of thing, we would have them realize that, they could talk about the different things that made them angry. And then they would maybe ask, well, would you feel angry if this happened to you? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. How about you? No, I think that would be kind of like, I might even laugh because I would think that would be maybe even a little silly that they tried that. Oh, well, so we react differently to the same thing. Isn't that curious? So we can see we have our own little part in how we're reacting. So then we're getting some personal power because we're realizing it's not necessarily what the other person did, it's partly who we are. And when we can claim our power, then we're not victims to it, right? So then the little kid goes home and he's been bullied because they haven't gone into the feeling of bullied yet. And the parent is able, because the parents had some education to it too, just go, wow, I feel that you're feeling very angry, because he knows he's able to step in and feel that feeling with his mirror neurons that his son is having. And he can say, wow, yeah, you're feeling really angry. And the little sister can say, yeah, I'm feeling angry too. And say, yeah, oh, wow. Okay, so everybody's feeling angry, and let's just stop and feel that in our bodies. And I love you no matter what. No, you got to stop hitting your sister. That's not okay. And the little girl can say, yeah, that's not okay. Anyway, so they all get into the space where they're allowed to be who they are. They're allowed to express the feelings that they have. The father doesn't get reactive and start yelling because he can't tolerate the sensations that he's feeling. And the mom comes home from work and everybody's getting along. Whoa, how awesome is this? So
That sounds beautiful.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. We'll get there. We'll get there with people like you, helping people and working with people. We'll get there. So we have one last two-part question for you, which is, what is your dream for yourself and what is your dream for women?
Good questions. Well, I would like to change our culture for the better. That's what I would like to do. And I'm open to the ways that that's going to unfold, however it's meant to. And for women, I see, well, first off, we're in a time of great change. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable from the feelings that we're all going through and the stresses that we're all going through. And I would just say to hold on to hope and positivity, because that's the direction that we're headed and that we're evolving towards love. So what I would see and hold, not just hope, is that that's where we're coming to, is that we are getting closer and closer to love and understanding how to heal trauma more and more. And the more of us who do the work, who are capable of doing the work, the more as we go out into the world, that's what other people's mirror neurons are being reflected with. They're reflecting, they're seeing, oh, that person is feeling good. Why? I want some of that. And in fact, I actually have some husband and wife client pairs because of that. I want what she's having, So yes, I see that for women. And I see that more and more our emotionality is going to be driving that to that point of being able to be in that right hemisphere state and feel calm and valued and cherished. And in fact, then being able to turn around and hold space for the rest of the society.
Thanks for listening to the Passionistas Project. Since we're not only business partners, but best friends and real-life sisters, we know how unique and truly special our situation is. We know so many solopreneurs, activists, women seeking their purpose, and more, who are out there doing it all on their own. They often tell us they wish they had what we have. So we've created a space for them and you to join our sisterhood, where trust, acceptance, and support are the cornerstones of our community. By joining, you become part of our family. We'll give you all of our sis tips on building meaningful relationships through the power of sisterhood and all the tools you need to thrive in 3 key areas: business growth, personal development, and social impact. You'll learn from our panel of Power Passionistas who are experts on topics like transformational leadership, letting go of perfectionism, the power of community, and so much more. You can connect with like-minded women and gender non-conforming, non-binary people who share your values and goals in chat spaces, at online Passionistas pajama parties, and virtual and in-person meetups. And you can register for our exclusive series of online courses designed to help you tap into your intuition, find your purpose, bring your mission to fruition, and integrate diversity, equity, and inclusion in every aspect of your plan. Be sure to visit thepassionistasproject.com to sign up for our free membership to join our worldwide sisterhood of passion-driven women who come to get support, find their purpose, and feel empowered to transform their lives and change the world. We'll be back next week with another Passionista who's defining success on her own terms and breaking down the barriers for herself and women everywhere. Until then, stay passionate.